So to begin, I'd like you to just spend a minute just writing some notes on what schemas mean to you. Schemas are a repeated pattern of behaviour. It's a child's way of understanding the world around them. So you might find some children don't display schematic play at all, which is absolutely fine, as we know children are individuals and learn in different ways. However, some children may engage in one schema at the same time, so it's important for us to support this brain development. So recognising schematic play gives us an insight to what the child is interested in and how they learn. So once they're identified, we can then keep this curiosity going by extending the learning in creative and imaginative ways. So by doing so, we are supporting the Curriculum for Excellence principles. We're helping their progression by building on this curiosity. We're providing provocations to extend their learning. We're challenging them in ways they enjoy. We're deepening the children's understanding by supporting these schemas. So we need to get it right for every child. So ensuring that we understand that children are active learners and they need that time to explore, and that we should take lead from the child. To be able to support schematic play, we need to have the correct environment. So understanding the impact of schematic play, it supports the principles of a high quality environment. So we really need a nurturing environment for the children. Children need to feel safe and confident in order to become successful learners. So having quiet spaces that are calm, more tranquil, as well as having no spaces to be noisier. It's important to get the right balance of stimulation, as we don't want the children overstimulated so that they can't focus. Schematic play needs an effective practitioner. So realising the ambition reminds us that interactions with the child are a key aspect of the learning environment. So with this in mind, we must carefully consider when to interact or just take a step back to observe. It's important not to interrupt if a child is in their zone. However, when we do interact, it must be meaningful. I've popped some core vocabulary in each slide. It's just a few examples of how to extend the language if you observe these schemas happening. I've found when reflecting my own practice that it's far more beneficial using statements rather than questions. The children are way more engaged for longer when they aren't hit with so many questions. So statements like, I wonder what would happen if I moved the ramp higher, or wow, that car is moving very fast. It just allows the children to be more engaged. They'll probably experiment for longer and have more of a conversation with you. So I'm going to share a short video clip. If you'd like, you could jot down things that you think that the child is learning in the video. So in that video clip, the child was engaged in the positioning schema. The child was specifically finding the vehicles from the basket to line them up. The child there was experimenting with order. In the positioning schema, the child is interested in experimenting with order, symmetry, placing objects in lines, patterns, rows, which means there's some great positional language to use to enrich the experience if an adult was to interact but be mindful not to interfere. The children might explore small, medium, large, long and short. They might have an interest in exploring colours, shapes. So to support this schema, you could have loads of different loose parts out. You could have beads, threading beads, which may encourage pattern making. But bear in mind that these are just provocations. They are open-ended and doesn't mean the child has to use them for schematic play. It might stimulate totally different ideas for the children. Here are some more examples of the positioning schema, which you've probably seen in your setting as well. The transporting schema. This is when children are learning about distance and journeys. They will have an interest in moving objects and themselves from place to place. Children might like having handfuls of objects and carrying them around the room. They might fill their pockets. It's great to have things like bags, handbags, gift bags around the nursery so children can fulfil this urge. Other great resources are having trolleys, wheelbarrows, loads of loose parts, pine cones, empty tins, baskets, sticks and shells. So, is transporting encouraged in your setting? I'm not saying that if a child is carrying buckets of water to the computer that this is to be encouraged, but if they show an interest in this, then there are many ways to extend and develop this curiosity. So it's really important to be mindful to what you think the child is trying to achieve so we can respond. The enclosing and enveloping schema is when children explore the concepts which relate to size, shape, volume and measurement. They are learning about space and capacity. So children might like to build structures to form an enclosure. So it could be an enclosure for example, the farm animals. They could build a wall around the farm animals, or they might build something around themselves to make an enclosure. Some children might create borders around their art creations. Children might like to cover themselves or wrap items in paper or materials, which is a really popular one. They might like to wrap presents. They also might like to create dens. They might like to dress up. So it's really important for us as practitioners to be highly responsive to this, to ensure that we can support this schema throughout the environment. Here are a few more examples of children engaged in the enclosing and enveloping schema. Next is the trajectory schema. This is when children are interested in how things move and respond. They might like to push, pull, throw or hit things through the air and watch things fly. So next I'm going to show a very short video clip of a child engaged in the trajectory schema. So that short clip is a good example of how schematic play doesn't always last a long period of time. The child there was experimenting with the stick, throwing it up and then seeing how it falls back down. So once this was observed, we then ensured that there were appropriate resources to support this. So for example, we had spray bottles with paint in them, feathers, balls, skittles. I mean, this doesn't mean that the child has to use these things, but we as practitioners understand that supporting the schemas leads to a high quality environment. So the children here were using the loose parts to create a road for the cars. They experimented with the parts moving up and down to see how fast the car travelled. A lot of time was spent problem solving, watching and changing the movement. This play could also be the transporting schema, but for me, when I observed it, it was mainly trajectory, as they enjoyed watching and making the movement happen. Some things you might see around your setting you might think is problematic, such as children playing with the taps, letting the water just run and run. But it's important to remember that this most likely would indicate that the child is in the trajectory schema. So it's important to allow them to explore the schema, but in a safe way. Don't try to stop it, but try to think creatively to come up with ways to support this child. You could fulfil this urge that the child might have by setting up a simple water provocation. You could use the hose, watering cans, so they can explore the water movement. So some other things that children might like to do is, jump off furniture or throw things. So to think more widely, you could set up ramps. You could make use out of soft play if you have that. You could set up obstacle courses. You can also use songs and music to support the trajectory schema. So songs like Five Little Monkeys. You could use the props to jump up and down, or use your bodies. There's 10 green bottles, and sticky kids are also really great ways to fulfil the schema as well. This next video, the child is engaged in more than one schema. So while you're watching it, have a wee think and what schemas you can observe. So what I observed in that video clip was the child was engaged in the trajectory and enclosing an enveloping schema. So the boy was filling the bucket with the sand, so he was exploring size and capacity. Has he got enough sand? Does he need more? Is it overflowing? But then when he's watching the sand fall through the holes, he's experimenting with the movement. The connecting schema is when a child is interested in how things join together and separate. So this might include building and destructing their building block creations, gluing things together and pulling them apart. So it's important to have resources that support this, such as, things like string, sellotape, glue. A really good way of supporting this schema is if you've got your woodwork bench with loose parts and tools. So they can use the hammer and nails to connect things together. Other ideas are, loose part guttering, crates. They might use these to join together and separate, using their problem solving. And there on the left is a couple of examples of children in the connection schema. The transforming schema is when a child has an interest in things or themselves changing appearance. So they will have an interest in creating new things through the exploration of what happens when substances are changed. So allowing children to mix the different colours of paint together is supporting this schema. Activities such as baking, jelly making, Play-Doh making, having ice out to investigate what happens next is a great way and also fantastic STEM. So if you are making Play-Doh, it's really important to let the children experiment with the ingredients, as the process, the mixing and the testing, is probably more interesting to them than the final product. So here are a few good websites and books if you want to find out more information on schemas. There's also some really great YouTube videos that go over the schemas again with different examples and ways to extend them.